Welcome to Channel X TV. I'm delighted to be joined by Sanket today, co-founder of Fleek, an exciting new marketplace platform, um, all to do with pre-loved clothing. But first of all, welcome, Sanket. How are you today?
Thank you, Chris, for having me on the live stream. I'm doing great. It's early morning in London. I'm very excited to chat with you today.
So let's dive straight in to the pre-loved clothing market.
Yeah.
Everyone's telling me consumer demand for secondhand and in fact refurbished tech and everything is rising as people A, become more environmentally conscious, B, frankly, with the cost of living, no one's got that much money. So what are you seeing that's really driving the pre-loved market?
Yeah, that's a great question, Chris. And I think you kind of pointed and hinted at some of the things that are really important. And what we have seen, and especially when we got into the market, is that secondhand clothing was already getting really big. So if you think about marketplaces like Vinted and Depop and Poshmark and so on and so forth, and we think about like pop-ups around London and US and all of Europe, Preloved has had a major uprising, I would say, over last decade, and especially around COVID, something drastic change where people were sitting in their homes and they were online shopping, and it became a massive trend where people were buying a lot of pre-loved. But along with that, like you just said, I think sustainability is a very, very major cause for this uprising, and also the cost of living. Because, frankly speaking, if I want to buy, let's say, a North Face jacket, and I can buy it pre-loved, and I can spend, let's say, 50% of the money. I mean, North Face jackets, they can last for a long time. They're very well made. So why not buy something used that is as good as new, and then extend the life of the garment? And I think people are realizing that used clothing is really good for the environment, and it's good for the pockets. And we are here to push that mission forward.
It's really exciting because there's so much quality pre-loved clothing out there. But I've got to be honest, I just don't know where the retailers of this clothing get it from. So what's the back end of the market look like? I understand charity shops, obviously consumers will donate to a charity shop, then buy something else for a charity shop. But when a business is purely selling secondhand clothing, what does the sourcing of it look like, and how does it get in the hands of someone that no longer wants that clothing and is effectively giving it away, or in some cases throwing it away, to being sorted, cared for, cleaned, and ready for sale again?
Yeah. I feel like the secondhand supply chain is so global and so massive in nature that the first 6 months of our journey at Fleek was literally just mapping this journey of clothing. And I'll answer this question more directly than the one you asked. And if you feel like pushing in some areas, let me know. But I feel like there are different kind of vendors out there that sell secondhand clothing. You have the casual vendor on, let's say, Depop. Let's say you get on Depop and you have this very beautiful, let's say, coat, and you're like, hey, I want to sell this because I don't have a use for it, but somebody else might. All the way to folks who are selling on, let's say, in London on Brick Lane, who are selling hundreds of these coats. So clearly they don't have all those coats in their own closet, so they have to get it from somewhere. And what we've seen is that the smaller like what we call a reseller, who's selling more casually or semi-professionally, they would often either use their own closets. A lot of people do. And a lot of times they will go to charities, the ones that you talked about. You have the Oxfams of the world in US, you have the Goodwills of the world, and they will go there and they will pick items that they think can sell online. You can go to a charity, you can buy something fairly cheap, and then you can kind of go list it like online, or you can go to you can sell in like a flea market or a small store, so on and so forth.
I've got to stop you there because I
Yeah.
know this goes on, but this is quite small scale, kind of almost SME, not even SME, almost micro business of someone making a living. And I have huge admiration for them. I've got some favorite sellers saved on eBay that probably that's what they do. But what I'm thinking of is the really big sellers.
Right.
And also, I think Personally, I think my only sort of entry into this world is when I get a charity bag through the door for Bernardo's or Cancer or Marie Curie or something, saying, put your secondhand clothes that you don't no longer want in this bag and we'll collect it. Now, I'm sure that bag doesn't go straight to the local charity shop. What kind of happens when consumers do this?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. So I was coming to that, but let me kind of dig right into it. So so I'll tell you what the bigger sellers do, and I'll tell you the back end of it, because the back end is where it's the most exciting part, and that's where also like Fleek is kind of like built up. So just to answer your question more directly, the retailers and the bigger sellers, they have or what Fleek is trying to do is build a more robust supply chain for them to be able to source secondhand clothing, which is not just like going to a charity store and picking it out. And now, to understand how they do that, I have to spend at least a minute or two trying to help you understand the supply chain of secondhand clothing.
And this is the bit I'm actually really interested in.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk about it, right? So you are, let's say an individual, like let's say I'm wearing this sweater today. Maybe in a year I don't need this sweater. I'll go give it to a charity, or a bag will come to my house and I'll put that stuff in there, and I'll, supposedly it'll go to a charity. Now, what happens is the charities, especially in the Western world, where there is massive overconsumption. Let's not hide behind the fact, like we are consuming a lot of clothes, more than that we probably like are able to like keep in our house. And when those clothes get to the charities are not able to sell all of that on their floor. They're maybe able to sell 5% of it, maybe they're able to sell 10% of it, but majority of that clothing, and this is a supply chain that's existed for decades, actually get exported around the world in textile recycling centers. Now, these textile recycling centers are literally like around the world. A lot of them in like Europe, a lot of them in Asia, a lot of them in America. And what this textile recycling centers, what they're doing is they're taking upwards of 90% of our donations. So it's a huge, huge percent of our donations. And what they do is they do this process of like sorting and segregating, cleaning, refurbishing, all the way down to like something might be, a piece of cloth that you can't even use. And they will make some use of it. They will use it in, let's say, industrial wiping, literally like wipers that you use for like industrial use, all the way down to they will extract fiber out of it and make rugs out of it. So these textile recycling centers, which have been in business for like decades now, and then we work with a lot of them, they have been doing this full stack recycling. What we have been able to find is that in this 90% of the donation that are getting in there, there's a lot of clothes that are absolutely pristine and ready to use. A lot of it is stuff that needs to be refurbished, and sometimes you can't even like repurpose it as clothing, but a huge portion of that actually can be reused. And what we have been able to do is we've been able to take that portion of clothing that is ready to use or close to ready to use, and been able to pump that clothing back into the markets that need it. And because of this trend of sustainability, because of the trend of what you talked about in terms of the cost of living and people wanting to buy luxury items but not at luxury cost, we've been able to make that connection happen. And that's the beauty of what Fleek is.
So let's dig a little bit more into Fleek. What is your proposition for retailers? And also, where do you sit in that supply chain that makes it attractive for a retailer to come to you rather than trying to source their own goods in bulk?
Absolutely. So where Fleek sits is right in between the retailer. Let's say let's visualize it so that it's easier. A shop in, let's say, Brick Lane, for instance, that's a retailer, and we sit right in between that retailer and this textile recycling center. Let's say this textile recycling center is in, let's say, India, for instance. Like they can be anywhere in the world, right? And what we do is we build a marketplace in between. So now what we do, what we specialize in, what the value proposition we give is that we are able to connect this buyer and seller together, right? And we are providing them services like logistics, like, shipping in bulk overseas can be not the easiest thing in the world. So we provide that rails, right? Payments, cross-border payments are really, really can be complex. So we kind of provide that rails as well. All the way to providing buyer protection. Now, when you're buying in bulk, the buyer can always be like, hey, I don't know this person. Like, I'm not sure, like, if I can trust this. And this industry is fairly new. So that's where a marketplace comes, is like it connects them. And Chris, I'll double down by saying that like one of the key things that we have identified, which is also a value proposition, is the product we have built. So we are a tech company, and what we build as a product is really important. And what we've seen is that our marketplace, and if you go explore our app, it's a very video first social marketplace. And that's important because, like, secondhand bulk clothing is one of the only industries that I can think about where you're selling something in bulk, but everything is unique. It's almost a
Yeah.
contradiction. Right? So how do you really bring those buyers and sellers together, build trust, and let the buyer buy the items they're wanting to buy in bulk every month? We saw like it has to be video first, because if you're not video first, they're not going to be able to pick the items, right? And it has to be social. They have to interact with the seller. That's something that Fleek is building. That's like, we are one of our kind.
So if I'm a business, when I go to Fleek, what can I expect to see? I mean, let's say I specialize in men's suits, or I specialize in sports clothing, or maybe even more specific, I ski and snowboard clothing,
Yeah,
or I specialize in women's dresses. Can I be that specific? And is there enough quantity on Fleek to say these are the brands I want, or is it more these are the types of products I want? Tell us about the marketplace and the expectation for a retailer.
absolutely. Look, retailers want their store to be highly curated, right? To me, they are folks who really care about what they're selling. And for them, just like putting up 20 pieces of clothing that don't have a story together doesn't work. They're telling a story. So they are specific. And I can tell you they can get as specific as, I want this particular brand, this kind of a jacket, this kind of a sizing, this kind of a color. So we are talking like really, really specific. Now with secondhand clothing, of course, like getting very, very, very specific can be hard, because at some point you just don't have enough accumulated. But
Yeah.
on the Fleek platform, you can get very specific. Like for instance, if you want to buy, uh, let's say right now, let's talk about what's selling very well right now. That's a good example of it. Right now, Ralph Lauren quadricep, actually the kind that I'm wearing right now is really in trend. Like everybody wants this. And on Fleek, you can buy hundreds of thousands of these in a very fair size run of, let's say, like, small to like large, in 3 or 4 different colors. So you can get that specific. And that is the entire value proposition of Fleek, is that we want you to build the business the way you want to build. Historically in this industry, it's been like, hey, I want to buy 100 pieces, yeah, I'll buy 100 sweaters. But at Fleek you can get specific, because that's the only way, Chris, can you scale this industry.
And who should be using Fleek? Is it the micro business that's maybe been shopping in the charity shops and building a business but now wants to grow? Is it like you say, the retailer in Brick Lane that's been doing it for years, so they must have their own source of clothing already? Why should they come to you? Or is it the very, very large online businesses that just want to scale enormously and just don't have enough supply already?
That's a great question, and I think, Chris, it's all of them above. That's the answer, and let me tell you about the kind of buyers we have and how they use Fleek, and that kind of like will help clarify this question. So what we see is that on the smallest scale, you have a lot of folks who are just getting into reselling. They're just getting started, and what they are seeing Fleek as is the easiest way to get started. Previously they would have to go to like a charity, pick items over there. Now they can sit at their home, use the app, and buy like a pack of 10 pieces of clothing that they can sell very easily, heavily curated, right? So we have a lot of these buyers who are just getting started. We have a lot of buyers who are also graduating. So we call them like Depop graduates, which is, you have done like your reselling at a small scale. Now you want to do it more for like a living, right? You want to make £1,000, £2,000, £3,000 a month. So you're starting to graduate, right? And we see this journey of the smaller, more kind of like early stage entrepreneur graduating into more of like, a formidable entrepreneur, like sourcing at a regular basis, all the way to we have a lot of retailers on the platform also buying, and their needs are slightly different. Now those buyers are often like a lot more aware of what they want to buy. They're planning much more ahead of time. They also have a lot more needs. For instance, they need like some things delivered immediately. Some things have to be sea shipped because they are willing to take a longer delay. They want more financial services, like they might need like buy now, pay later, payment terms, so on and so forth, right? So we have this entire, and it doesn't stop there. We even have people who have multiple stores in the city. So, more of like your like chains, or like smaller chains, so to speak, who have even higher needs of like, preparing in advance and the stock they want, and seasonality and so forth. So, Chris, I think what we found is that we have found, I would say, a gap in the market that's fairly wide. And before Fleek came in, these customers were not being serviced the way they wanted to be serviced. And so what we see often is this entire gamut of buyers is addressable for Fleek, and we want to make sure we build something that addresses all of them. And I'll tell you why that's important, because one thing that we really care about at Fleek is to make secondhand the first choice. Now, to make secondhand the first choice, we have to take the entire world with us on this journey. It's not going to happen just by enabling a retailer or reseller or somewhere in between. We have to take the entire world with us, right? So we believe whatever we can do to really manifest this mission and vision for Fleek, we try to do that at Fleek.
Fantastic. So just how big is Fleek already? And I know you just had some investment. What are you going to do with that investment to grow the business?
Yeah. So thank you for asking. We just announced our Series A and seed raise together. We raised in total $20.4 million in the fundraising. And in terms of like how big Fleek is, we have right now, I would say, thousands to tens of thousands of buyers and about thousands of sellers on the Fleek platform who are transacting on a monthly basis. That are transacting on the Fleek platform. And what we want to do, Chris, with the money that we have raised is actually to double down on getting more buyers and getting more suppliers on the platform. We're just getting started. We have seen the initial inklings of what one might call product market fit, and where we are able to see the entire product of Fleek working. Buyers are coming onto the platform, suppliers are coming onto the platform. They're able to connect together. There's a lot of automation in the system, so they're able to seamlessly transact on the platform. And I think what we see is like, now that we've established those rails and we established the product, we want to get more buyers, spend the money on that. We want to get more suppliers, spend the money on that, and build the product, right? So double down on like payments, logistics, double down on building our app and make it like world class. That's what we're going to be using the money for, Chris.
Fantastic. So the message I'm getting is, if you're a small seller that has been doing this maybe as a lifestyle business and you want to turn pro and make your living on Vinted, Depop, eBay, wherever, there's a ready source of supply. And if you're a large business, either multi-store or online, there's an almost unlimited quantity of product available. So for those that want to find out more, how do they get hold of you, and how do they get hold of the Fleek app? Where do they go to download?
Absolutely. It's finding the Fleek app is fairly easy. You can go online and just search for Fleek, and then you should be able to find our platform. Our website is joinfleek.com. You can search for joinfleek.com online. There's links for downloading the app or using the websites as well. So please come, please check us out and see. And again, like you said it right. There is infinite inventory out there available, especially of secondhand clothing. And the important thing is that there is infinite inventory for everybody to participate. There's a lot of clothing out there, and there's a lot of clothing to share. So let's try to do our best as a community as well to just get that inventory and like get that back into the ecosystem, because there's more clothing than you think there is. So there's definitely enough on Fleek. There's definitely enough out there.
Thank you so much for your time, and I think we should come back in maybe 6 months or 9 months time and find out how Fleek has developed and what the state of the second-hand market is then. But for today, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chris. Lovely to be here.